The hunters become the hunted. The darkness between stars held many secrets, but none more dangerous than the ones that appeared harmless. Commander Thylex of the Kytherian Empire stood on the bridge of his research vessel, the Shadow of Truth, watching the void through eyes that had evolved to see in 16 different spectrums of light. His species had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, building an empire on superior technology and careful observation. Of lesser species, Thylex was typical of his kind, tall and thin with forearms that ended in delicate manipulator hands. His chidna skin had a blue-green sheen that marked him as a member of the science caste. The Kytherians believed knowledge was power, and power belonged to those intelligent enough to seize it. They had been studying humanity for decades, trying to understand how such a young species had spread so quickly across the stars. The bridge of the Shadow of Truth hummed with quiet efficiency. Banks of sensors and computers lined every wall, each one more advanced than anything most species could dream of building. This ship was designed for one purpose: to find, study, and catalogue the military capabilities of other races. The Kytherian High Council wanted to know everything about their potential enemies, especially the unpredictable humans. Commander called out sensor specialist Vorthak from her station near the center of the bridge. Her voice carried the musical quality that all Kytherians used when excited about a discovery. I am detecting an anomalous reading in the Kepler 442 system. The energy signature appears to be artificial. Thylex moved across the bridge with the flowing grace of his species. Each step was calculated and precise, a habit developed over centuries of evolution in low-gravity environments. He reached Vorthak's station and studied the data streams flowing across her screens. "Show me what you have found," he ordered. The main display filled with an image of empty space dotted with distant stars. At first, nothing seemed unusual about the view. Then Vorthak adjusted the sensor array, and something appeared that made Thylex's secondary eyes widen in surprise. Floating in the darkness was a human ship, but it looked wrong somehow. The vessel was roughly 800 feet long with a sleek hull that had once been painted in bright colors. Now those colors were faded and scarred by what appeared to be extensive battle damage. Sections of the hull were dark, suggesting failed power systems. The ship drifted without any apparent course or destination. Classification? Thylex asked, though he was already studying the vessel's configuration himself. The ship's design was unlike any human military vessel in their databases. It was too small to be a battleship, too heavily armed to be a transport, and covered with modifications that served no obvious purpose. Computer analysis suggests it is a variant of human gladiator class, Vorthak replied. However, the design has been extensively modified. I am reading weapons systems that do not appear in any of our intelligence reports. Thylex felt his excitement growing. Gladiator-class vessels were legendary among the Kytherians who studied human military technology. These ships were used in the brutal arena competitions that humans seemed to love so much. If the Shadow of Truth could capture or even thoroughly scan such a vessel, the intelligence value would be enormous. Life signs, he asked. Minimal, Vorthak reported. I am detecting perhaps 15 to 20 humans aboard, but their life signs are extremely weak. The ship appears to be running on emergency power only. It may have been damaged in some kind of battle. This was perfect. A damaged human gladiator ship with a skeleton crew was exactly the kind of prize that would advance Thylex's career. The Kytherian High Council rewarded commanders who brought back valuable intelligence about human fighting capabilities. This find could make him famous throughout the Empire. Begin approach, Thylex ordered. Activate all scanning arrays. I want to know everything about that vessel, its weapons, its defenses, its crew, and most importantly, what makes it different from standard human warships. The Shadow of Truth moved closer to the drifting human ship with predatory grace. The Kytherian vessel was 3 times larger than its target and mounted sensors that could penetrate the deepest armor plating. Nothing could hide from their technology, especially not a crippled ship running on minimal power. Inside the human vessel, however, something very different was happening. The ship that appeared so helpless from the outside was actually operating according to a carefully planned strategy. Captain Marcus Steele sat motionless in his command chair, but he was far from unconscious. Like the rest of his crew, he was in a state called combat meditation, a technique developed by arena fighters to conserve energy while maintaining perfect readiness for battle. Marcus was a veteran of over 200 arena matches. His body bore the scars of countless battles, but his mind remained sharp and focused. He had been fighting in the gladiator circuits since he was 18 years old, working his way up from small-time matches to commanding his own arena ship. The Crimson Thunder was his pride and joy, a vessel designed specifically for the most dangerous sport in human space. Through sensors that appeared to be offline, Marcus monitored the approaching alien ship. The vessel was exactly what he had been hoping to encounter, a Kytherian research ship loaded with advanced technology and crewed by scientists who thought they understood human capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The other members of his crew remained in their meditation positions throughout the ship. First Officer Elena Vasquez controlled navigation from her station on the bridge. She was a small woman with quick reflexes and an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional combat that made her one of the best pilots in the arena circuit. Weapons specialist Connor McCready sat at his console with the patience of a hunter waiting for the perfect shot. The big man had hands that could operate 12 different weapon systems simultaneously while calculating firing solutions that would make a computer jealous. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez monitored the ship's systems from the engine room. She could make the Crimson Thunder perform maneuvers that violated several laws of physics, and she took personal pride in keeping the ship's experimental technology running at peak efficiency. Security Chief David Park prepared his teams for the possibility of boarding action, while Medical Officer Dr. Sarah Chen stood ready to treat any casualties that might result from the coming battle. Each crew member was a specialist in their field, but more than that, they were gladiators. They had chosen this life not because they had to fight, but because they loved the challenge. Arena combat was the ultimate test of human ingenuity, courage, and skill. It was war elevated to an art form. The Kytherian ship moved closer, and Marcus felt the familiar tingle of scanning beams penetrating his hull. The aliens were being thorough, sending deep penetration sensors throughout every section of his ship. They thought they were studying a helpless target, but they were actually triggering the most dangerous protocol in human space. Commander, reported Vorthak from her station aboard the Shadow of Truth, the scanning is proceeding normally. I am beginning to map the interior of the human vessel. The damage appears to be more extensive than we initially believed. Most weapon systems show as offline. Thylex studied the incoming data with satisfaction. The human ship was even more helpless than he had hoped. Its weapons were powered down, its shields were offline, and its crew appeared to be in some kind of hibernation state. This would be the easiest intelligence-gathering operation of his career, but as the Kytherian scanners penetrated deeper into the Crimson Thunder, they began to trigger systems that had been designed by humans who understood the nature of their species better than any alien ever could. Warning lights that had been dark for weeks suddenly began to glow. Computer systems that appeared to be offline started processing information at incredible speeds. And in his command chair, Captain Marcus Steele opened his eyes and smiled. Computer, he said quietly, status report. All systems operating at full capacity, Captain, replied the ship's artificial intelligence in a voice that was both calm and eager. We are currently being scanned by a Kytherian research vessel. Estimated crew complement, 250 scientists and support personnel. No significant military training detected among the crew. Marcus's smile grew wider. Perfect. Signal the crew. It's time to show our guests what human gladiators are really capable of. Throughout the ship, the other crew members began to stir from their meditation. Each one opened their eyes with the controlled precision of a predator preparing to strike. They had been waiting for this moment for weeks, drifting through space and pretending to be helpless while hoping that someone would be foolish enough to scan them. The arena protocols that governed gladiator combat were older than the human space program. They were based on ancient traditions of single combat and trial by battle that stretched back to the earliest days of human civilization. When a gladiator ship was scanned by a hostile vessel, it was considered a formal challenge to combat. The challenged ship had the right to create an arena field that would trap both vessels until one emerged victorious. Most alien species didn't know about arena protocols because they had never bothered to study human culture beyond its military applications. They saw the gladiator ships as simply another type of warship, never understanding that these vessels represented something far more dangerous, human beings who fought not for territory or resources, but for the pure joy of combat itself. Weapons. Systems Online, reported Connor McCready from his station. The big man's hands moved across his controls with practiced ease. All batteries charged and ready for combat. Shall I give them a demonstration of human firepower? Not yet, Marcus replied. Let them finish their scans first. I want them to get a good look at what they are dealing with before we begin the real show. On the bridge of the Shadow of Truth, Commander Thylex was beginning to notice that something was wrong with his target. The human ship's power signature had changed dramatically in the last few minutes. Systems that had appeared offline were now showing full operational status. Vorthak, he called out, his voice carrying a note of concern that was unusual for a Kytherian commander. Are you certain that vessel is as damaged as we initially believed? The sensor specialist worked frantically at her controls, recalibrating the scanning array to get a clearer picture of what was happening aboard the human ship. What she saw made her primary eyes widen in alarm. Commander, the human vessel is not damaged at all. All systems are operating at full capacity. They were concealing their true operational status. Before Thylex could respond to this disturbing revelation, the communication system aboard his ship activated. A human voice filled the bridge, calm, confident, and carrying an undertone of anticipation that sent chills through the Kytherian crew. Kytherian vessel Shadow of Truth, this is Captain Marcus Steele of the Arena-class ship Crimson Thunder. Thank you for your interest in our capabilities. You have just issued a formal challenge under the Arena protocols of human space. We accept your challenge with great pleasure. Asterisk when predators meet gladiators. Commander Thylex stared at the communication display in growing horror as he began to understand what had just happened. The concept of Arena protocols was not completely unknown to Kytherian intelligence, but they had dismissed it as another example of human barbarism. The idea that simply scanning a vessel could trigger some kind of formal combat challenge seemed absurd to a species that valued careful observation and scientific analysis above all else. What does he mean by Arena protocols? Thylex demanded of his communications officer. This is a scientific mission. We have no interest in combat with anyone. Before anyone could answer, the space around both ships began to change in ways that defied Kytherian understanding of physics. A massive energy field started forming, creating a sphere that enclosed both vessels in a cage of crackling power. The field pulsed with colors that had no names in any Kytherian language, deep reds and brilliant golds that seemed to burn with an inner fire. Commander, called out Navigation Officer Kelthax from his station. I am detecting a massive energy barrier forming around both ships. Our navigation computers cannot plot any course that would take us outside the field. Thylex felt the first stirrings of real fear as he watched the barrier grow stronger and more solid with each passing second. The Shadow of Truth was equipped with engines powerful enough to escape the gravity well of a small moon, but the readings on his screens showed that no amount of thrust would be sufficient to break through the energy field that now surrounded them. Aboard the Crimson Thunder, Captain Marcus Steele stood up from his command chair for the first time in weeks. He stretched his arms and rolled his shoulders like a fighter preparing for a match. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency that came from years of arena combat. Elena, bring us to combat configuration, Marcus ordered. Connor, I want a full tactical analysis of our opponents. Rosa, how are our special systems looking? First Officer Elena Vasquez's hands danced across her navigation controls as the Crimson Thunder began its transformation. Hidden panels slid open throughout the ship's hull to reveal weapon ports that had been concealed during their deception. The vessel's overall configuration shifted as armor plating moved into combat positions and additional thrusters deployed to give the ship greater maneuverability. Combat configuration achieved, Captain, Elena reported. All systems showing green across the board. Weapons specialist Connor McCready studied the sensor data streaming across his displays. The Kytherian ship was impressive in size, but Connor had faced larger opponents in the arena. What concerned him more was the alien vessel's obvious focus on defensive systems rather than offensive weapons. They are built for research and observation, Connor reported. Heavy shielding and armor, but their weapons are mostly defensive in nature. They have some kind of plasma cannon array, but nothing. That suggests they are designed for ship-to-ship combat. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez monitored the exotic systems that made the Crimson Thunder more than just another warship. The Arena circuit had driven human technology in directions that most alien species would consider impossible. Fighters who wanted to survive in the gladiator rings had to push the boundaries of what ships could do. Quantum field generators are online and stable, Rosa reported. Probability cascade drive is charged and ready. All exotic systems showing nominal parameters. These were technologies that existed nowhere else in human space. The Arena circuit operated under its own rules, with its own research and development programs. Gladiator ships were testbeds for experimental weapons and defensive systems that were too dangerous or too expensive for regular military use. Marcus opened a communication channel to the Kytherian ship. His voice was friendly and conversational, as if he were discussing plans for a pleasant afternoon rather than a fight to the death. Commander Thylex, I realize this situation might be confusing for you, so let me explain the rules. The Arena field that now surrounds us is absolute. Nothing gets in or out until one ship can no longer continue combat. This is not a battle for territory or resources. This is a test of skill, courage, and ingenuity. May the best crew win. Asterisk. On the shadow of truth, Thylex listened to this explanation with mounting disbelief. The humans were treating mortal combat as if it was some kind of sporting event. This was exactly the kind of irrational behavior that made humanity so dangerous and unpredictable. Human vessel, Thylex replied, this is madness. We are scientists, not warriors. We have no desire to fight you or anyone else. Surely we can resolve this situation through peaceful negotiation. Marcus's laugh echoed through both ships. Commander, you made the decision to fight when you put your scanners on us. Arena protocols exist for a reason. When you study a gladiator ship without permission, you're saying that you think you're strong enough to take what you want by force. We are just giving you the chance to prove it. The truth was even more complex than Marcus was explaining. Arena protocols had evolved from humanity's long history of trial by combat, but they served a practical purpose in the modern era. Gladiator ships were repositories of humanity's most advanced military technology. They were also crewed by some of the most skilled fighters in human space. If someone wanted to steal their secrets, they had to prove they deserved them through combat. All weapons, prepare for combat demonstration, Marcus ordered. Connor, show them what human ingenuity looks like. The Crimson Thunder opened fire, but not in any way the Kytherians expected. Instead of targeting their ship directly, the human weapons created a complex pattern of energy beams and projectiles that ricocheted off the arena field walls. Each shot was precisely calculated to bounce multiple times before converging on the Kytherian vessel from dozens of different angles simultaneously. Commander Thylex watched in horror as his ship was struck by weapons fire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The shadow of truth's shields flared and sparked as they tried to deflect impacts that arrived from impossible directions. The humans had turned the arena field itself into part of their weapon system. Return fire. Thylex ordered desperately. All weapons, target the human vessel. The Kytherian plasma cannon spoke with voices of controlled fury, sending streams of superheated energy toward the Crimson Thunder. But the human ship was no longer where it appeared to be. The probability cascade drive allowed the vessel to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, making it nearly impossible to target accurately. The plasma beams passed harmlessly through flickering ghost images while the real ship danced between dimensions. Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the battle from the medical bay, but her role extended far beyond treating wounded crew members. The arena circuit had taught humans that combat was as much about psychology as it was about weapons and tactics. She activated the ship's psychological warfare systems, broadcasting a carefully crafted mix of sounds and images designed to disrupt enemy morale. The Kytherian crew began to hear things that shouldn't exist, the sound of human laughter mixed with ancient war songs, whispered voices speaking in languages that predated their civilization. Visual displays throughout their ship flickered with images of human warriors throughout history, from ancient gladiators to modern arena fighters. "What is happening to our systems?" demanded sensor specialist Vorthak. "The humans are infiltrating our computer network somehow." But it wasn't infiltration in any traditional sense. The psychological warfare systems worked by broadcasting signals that took advantage of quantum entanglement effects created by the arena field. The humans were using the same energy barrier that trapped both ships as a medium for their mental attacks. Security Chief David Park prepared his boarding teams, but he knew that close combat was unlikely in this engagement. The Kytherians were not a warrior species, and their ship was not designed for the kind of brutal fighting that characterized arena matches. Still, he wanted to be ready for any possibility. Medical Officer Dr. Sarah Chen's real expertise lay in understanding alien psychology. She had studied dozens of different species during her years in the arena circuit, learning how to exploit the mental weaknesses that every race carried. The Kytherians prided themselves on their logical, scientific approach to life. The chaotic, seemingly irrational nature of human combat was their worst nightmare. The battle continued with the Crimson Thunder demonstrating capabilities that the Kytherians had never imagined possible. The human ship moved through space like a living thing, spinning and weaving through attack patterns that should have been impossible. Its weapons fired with precision that seemed to border on precognition, while its defenses adapted to each new threat faster than computer systems should have been able to process. Commander Thylex realized with growing despair that his ship was being systematically dismantled by opponents who seemed to be enjoying every moment of the fight. The humans weren't just trying to defeat him, they were putting on a show, demonstrating their superiority in every possible way. "Commander," reported his weapons officer, "our plasma cannons are overheating. The power relays cannot handle sustained combat at this intensity." "Shields down to 30%, added the defense coordinator. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We cannot continue this battle much longer." But the humans were not trying to destroy the Kytherian ship. Marcus Steele was a gladiator, not a murderer. The point of arena combat was to prove superiority, not to commit genocide. He wanted the aliens to survive so they could spread the word about what happened when someone challenged human fighters. "All weapons, cease fire," Marcus ordered. "Open a channel to the Kytherian ship." The arena field began to flicker and fade as the combat protocols recognized that one side had clearly established dominance. Commander Thylex watched in amazement as the energy barrier that had trapped them simply dissolved, leaving both ships floating free in normal space. "Commander Thylex," Marcus said over the communication channel, "your ship fought with honor, but you were never prepared for this kind of combat. Arena protocols have been satisfied. You are free to go." Thylex could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You are not going to destroy us." "Of course not," Marcus replied. "You scanned us, we fought, you lost. That's how the arena works. But now you know something that most aliens don't understand about humanity. We don't fight because we have to. We fight because we choose to. And that makes all the difference." As the shadow of truth limped away from the battlefield, Commander Thylex began composing his report to the Kytherian High Council. He would tell them about the human gladiator ship and its incredible capabilities. More importantly, he would warn them about the dangerous mindset that drove humanity to excel at warfare, not for conquest or survival, but for the simple joy of testing themselves against worthy opponents. Word of what happened would spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the survivors of the Shadow of Truth. Other species would learn the lesson that the Kytherians had discovered too late: never scan a human arena ship unless you're prepared for the fight of your life. Because somewhere in the darkness between stars, human gladiators waited for the next challenge, ready to show the galaxy what happened when predators encountered prey that fought back with a smile. Asterisk.